Our culture is fairly obsessed with sports, isn't it? Wow. Now, I love sports. I love sports. In some ways, I'm not complaining. But we're kind of obsessed with it. I mean, it's just kind of nutty how much we do. I mean, it's just been funny. I saw on Facebook of a friend somewhere far away that their early teenage daughter was ready to sign. They were doing like a signing, like at a table with a backdrop, signing the contract to play for her volleyball team, and she's like 13. I mean, we get obsessed with this from the time kids are little bitty in t-ball and soccer leagues all the way through high school sports and then college and then, of course, certainly professional. I love watching sports, don't get me wrong, but man, I mean, it just pervades our culture. And certainly here, you've got no shortage of options, right? You've got the Cardinals, sort of. I rooted for them, I really did, because I'm having grown up close to Lubbock, I've been a Texas Tech fan my whole life. That's right. And so I was rooting for Cliff Kingsbury, and it just didn't work out, and I hated that. But we'll see, we'll see. But you got the Mercury, WNBA Mercury. You got the Suns. You got the Diamondbacks. You got all the Cactus League business. You've got the Raceway. I mean, just on and on and on and on and on and on. Phoenix, yeah, that's right. All kinds of great things. All kinds of sports. And so when we have all those sports, we have a pretty good idea of what a team does, right? Even if you're not a sports person, you have some idea of how a team functions, that it's a collection of individuals, and all those individuals have their own abilities and skills, and depending on the sport size, and they play a position that makes sense for who they are and what they have to offer the team. Now, those folks have to do their own individual work, right? I mean, they've got to do their own strength training. They got to do their conditioning. They got to pay attention to their nutrition, to their emotional and mental health. I mean, there's all kinds of things. They got to study the playbook. Anybody? Just not very many. That might be too sensitive out here with the Cardinals. So, okay, I'll stop. I'll stop. So you got to do your individual work. If you don't understand that, talk to me when I'm drinking one of my 7 floats. So you have to do the individual work, but you don't do it just for the individual. You do it because then when you come together with the team, you want to merge, right? You want to work together as a unit. They often talk about team unity, right? Unity, not uniformity. Not everybody's the same, not everybody has the same role, has the same skills, but it's about working together as a unit. And often when that happens, when they do it really well, they win. Whatever the team is, they win. And that's what we really like, right? Everybody likes a winner. Not that many people will select a team. I mean, there are those. Select a team that they want to root for the perennial loser. But most of us like winners. There's even the bandwagon fans, right? That you're not all that much into sports or all that much into teams, but boy, there's this one team that keeps winning, and you sure are their fan until they lose. And then we just forget it because we like winning. We part of winning. So we kind of understand how this whole team thing works. As far as that goes. So on the one hand, we understand what Paul is getting at in 1 Corinthians 12 when he's talking about how the body of Christ has all these different members, and they all these different gifts and all these different roles, but they're to work together as a unit for the unity of the body of Christ. So we kind of get that. Sure. There is a problem, though, with drawing a direct line between the image of a sports team and the image of the body of Christ as a team. There's a little bit of a challenge because it doesn't fit to apply the idea of a sports team to the Christian faith and life in the church. It just doesn't fit, and here's the reason. The Christian faith and our life in the church is not about winning and losing. It's just not a competition. It's not a scorekeeping thing. Now, I know you talk to some people, and one of the first questions is, well, how big is your church? right? I mean, well, yeah, how much money do y'all bring in? Or it's like a competition. It's not a competition. I've told plenty of people over the years when they say, they'd visit a church I was pastoring, and they'd say, well, but we're really members of the whatever church, non-United Methodist, whatever it was. And I'd say, well, great, well, we're all on the same team, aren't we? It's okay, we're on the same team. Because it's not a competition, although some people look at it that way. So the team we're talking about today is, well, our goal is not to win, it's to make a difference. It's to make a difference, to have an impact. Not only here, but out in the community too. To make a difference. That's what we're here for. So the team we're talking about today, it's not just the mechanics of teamwork, but to recognize the people on the team. Who is it that's on the team? And to honor and value all of those people. So we're going to need to consider some context. I made a statement a few weeks ago that most people underestimate the role of how much of the New Testament is written in response and or related to things going on in the Roman Empire. Because that was the context. That informed everything that was going on that was written about in the New Testament. So just real quick, first century Roman Empire, wherever the Roman Empire in all its large area that it covered, the demographics looked like this. You had the elites. These were people of power, influence, wealth, and generally that was along family lines. Someone had become a senator, had become a leader in a government. And then their son, in that culture, the son, would be a prominent person. And then their son would be a prominent person, and they would be the elites. The elites would be 10 to 20% of a population. They were generally educated, of course. And then you had the peasants, who were trying to live day by day. That's it. There's your demographics. There was no middle class. Middle class is kind of a modern phenomenon, but there was no middle class. It was the haves and the have-nots on steroids. All right? So in that context, there are all kinds of things that we need to pay attention to. The Roman Empire, much of what's written in the New Testament is actually taking something the Roman Empire says and they're turning it. So like in the Roman Empire talked about itself as a body, like a physical body that has many members, that has different roles. But in the Roman Empire, the head of the Roman Empire is not Christ, obviously, it is the emperor, it is Caesar. And Caesar's family and close people. That's the head. And all of the body then is in service to Caesar. And some parts of the body were less lovely and not, but they were essential, like hands and feet. Remember 2,000 years ago, people did not have the kind of sense of hygiene that you and I have, right? Hands and feet got really dirty all the time, stayed dirty all the time. So to the elites, the peasants were the hands and feet of the Roman Empire to do the dirty work. Because the elites knew this has to get done. And they were going to do it. So we need those peasants who will take care of that. You see the difference in the notion of a body. And everything was in service to Caesar. And so then there's this movement that starts in this region where people start hearing about this person, Jesus of Nazareth, and hearing that he really was the Son of God. That he really did do miracles. That he was crucified and he rose from the grave. And people began to be inspired and convinced of the truth of that. And they began to join that movement. And they began to tell their friends, and they would come, and so as this movement was growing, it transcended all of the different divisions in the culture. And so you had people who were of the elites joining the way of Jesus. You had people who were peasants. You had people who were powerful, people with no power, people with money, no money. You had people who were educated, not educated, joining this movement. And then all those people would come to church. All those people would come to church. I talked about cultural norms last week. You might see the storylines write itself, right? With that, just for who's in the room, what's going on. Those people would come to church, and there was no shortage of conflict that was going on at that time. So one of the things that talks about here in chapter 12 is spiritual gifts. Now, spiritual gifts, it's talked about in 1 Corinthians 12 through 14. It's talked about in Romans 12, Ephesians 4, that these are gifts that God gives to people who to be used in service in and through the church, so that we would work together as a team, as a body of Christ, to make a difference. And so these spiritual gifts, Paul talks about them as they're all equal. It doesn't matter what you have. It's important. It matters. But in that church in Corinth, it began to be played out along these societal lines. And some spiritual gifts were important, and some were not important. Now, my guess is, and I don't have the data to back this up, but my guess is that played out along the lines of elites and peasant, of what gifts were important, which ones were not. And they began to think of themselves as separate. Well, we're the important ones in the church, and they're not. We have more to offer, and they don't. So Paul was saying, yeah, it doesn't really work that way. I mean, they were having issues back in chapter 11 with communion. Okay, so it's time to come together for worship, right? So they come to worship, and there's going to be 30, 40, 50 people gather. Well, they didn't have church buildings in that time, like we do. So they would meet in someone's home. Well, let's see. Who would have a home that could accommodate 30, 40, 50 people at one time? It would be the elites. And so they'd go into one of these homes. Well, the elites, it was kind of like, hey, this is a party. And they would throw a big party, and they'd have all kinds of food, and they'd have all kinds of wine, and they would eat, and they would drink, and toward the end of the time, they'd have a worship, and they would want to have communion. But, oh, sorry, we're out of bread. So the elites get communion, and those who were poor did not. Well, Paul kind of let them have it for that. Oh, no, this is not the way it's going to be. This is not the way it's going to be. You see how they were playing out their cultural norms, even in the ways that they did church. And Paul is saying, you want to have a party? Fine. Do it somewhere else, some other time. When you're together as the body of Christ, everybody gets equal amount, because everybody's important, everything matters. Yeah, indeed. So, I don't know about you, but sometimes I think of these scenes and I stop and I think, so what would that have felt like to be there in that moment? What would it have felt like to be in someone's house and you're one of the elites? If you're one of the elites, that might have felt pretty good if you didn't stop and think about who else was around you. And if you're one of the peasants, I bet that did not feel very good. Many of us, maybe all of us, I don't know, have probably been in a situation at some point in time in our lives where we felt looked down on, where it was not necessarily said to us directly, but kind of, you don't belong here because of whatever. That's hurtful. That's hurtful anytime, anywhere. So Paul is saying that should never, ever, ever happen in a church. Ever, for any reason. Because we all matter to God. We all matter. So when Paul writes about the body of Christ, he takes a different approach. So let me just restate. So the problem is that many in the Corinthian church were living by their cultural norms of hierarchy instead of living by Jesus' teaching and example. The solution that Paul indicates is, you know what? When Jesus came and he died on the cross and he rose from the grave, he eliminated all of those divisions, all of those hierarchies. There is no longer Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female. The divisions are gone. The divisions are gone. The challenge is human behavior. It's human behavior for people to actually honor and respect one another. For people to actually live that out, to actually demonstrate a respect for other people who are different, who don't, you're like, I have no way I think of connecting to this person, but they matter, and to treat them that way. I've been fortunate in many ways, and I realize I have a long list of privilege to enjoy, and I'm well aware of that. One of the ways that I was raised, my key influences in life were my dad and my granddad. And I saw both these men, I witnessed both of them treat people the right way, with respect, in every situation. My granddad was a farmer. He treated anyone who worked on the farm with him the same way. My dad was the same too. My dad, one time I remember I was at school, elementary, playing on the playground, and a garbage truck drives by, and one of the kids, one of the boys, starts yelling out derogatory things about guys who would drive a trash truck. And so some of the other guys chimed in. So later, when Dad had gotten home, and I was saying something about, at school we were saying this about the garbage truck driver. And my dad said, well, why would you do that? Well, he's just a garbage truck driver. And Dad said, well, he does something pretty important, doesn't he? Like what? What if he didn't pick up your trash all the time? What would we do with it? We'd just burn it. Okay, everybody in this neighborhood is burning trash every day. Is that what you want? No. Because see, I grew up around farmers, and a lot of farmers did burn their trash. So I'd been around, they don't do it as much anymore. They used to, they burned their trash out behind their house. So I knew what that was like. And I tried to imagine everybody in the neighborhood burning the trash. I said, no. No, that wouldn't be good. He said, right. He's doing something pretty important, and we shouldn't call him names because of that. Huh, yep, all right. You're right. It didn't matter if it was a welder or a teacher or a lawyer or a garbage truck driver. Treat them with respect. And man, if we can do that in the world around us, we can certainly do that in the church. We can certainly do it in the church. So Paul uses this same body analogy as the Romans did. He just said, okay, we're not doing this just to, yes, we're serving Christ, but Christ is serving as the one who directs all of the body in this work. So maybe we need to think of a different concept of team instead of a sports team, a different kind of team. Certainly we talk about teams at work. I know there's even a platform called Teams, and we think of that. But even those are competitive often, one way or another. I see a few people kind of smirking. Yeah, they're a little competitive. So that doesn't work. Another team that we usually don't call a team though are music groups. Think of a musical group. The Foo Fighters or the whoever, a musical group. They're a favorite of mine. You have tickets. They got a concert in October at Talking Stick. Got tickets already. The Beatles, yeah. So when you think of a music group, okay, you have a collection of individuals who all have an instrument. With some, it's their voice. That's their instrument, right? They have their own instrument, and they have to work on that. They have to put in the practice, and then they got to come together, and they got to merge that to do something in such a way that moves the people who listen. Right? Because they're not doing it. I know there are musical competitions. I know there are, but generally those are used for educational, pedagogical purposes to help people improve to a level, right? So you have people who are on these music teams who are trying to convey the power and the message of music through what they do. And they are led by a director or a conductor at some level. Even these rock bands generally have somebody, music director, working with them at some point. And do you ever think about the fact that the conductor never makes a sound? The conductor never makes a sound. That's not their role. Their role is to bring out the gifts and the music of the people in the band, in the orchestra, in the choir, and the whatever. Bring that out so the power of the message is reflected to everybody. I mean, it's a pretty important role the conductor has. But they're not the ones making a sound. It's all the people together as we express our gifts and our abilities in God's service. So I don't know about you, but there's been plenty of times that I'll turn to music when I'm headed to the gym and I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling sluggish. I got to get perked up here, so I'm cranking it up. There's times when I can't go to sleep, so I listen to some mellow music. If I need inspiration, I usually listen to choral music. I should tell the choir that when they're here, right? Somehow I think it'll get around to them. But I do. That really inspires me. All those voices coming together with this message that just moves us. So when you think of that as a church team, that Christ is our head to order and direct us in our efforts in the church and outside the church so that we use our giftedness in ways that make a difference in the lives of other people. It makes a difference in the lives of other people. Now, generally, I know that when people talk about, when I talk in the church, you talk about spiritual gifts and what you have to offer and all that. A lot of people are like, I don't have much I can offer. Well, sometimes that's, I understand. You don't want to toot your own horn. I get that, but it all counts. It all matters. You may say, well, all I do is get the coffee ready every Sunday. Are you kidding? That's job number one in my book. That is critical ministry. Get the coffee ready. That's a big. I like all these amens. So those are all. It all matters. Just like when you look into fitness materials and it'll say, if you're short on time, you don't have an hour to work out. Do you have 10 minutes? You have 10 minutes. Go walk the stairs for 10 minutes. Stand by your desk and do squats for 10 minutes. If it's push-ups or anything, 10 minutes. And the articles I've read say it all matters. It all counts. It's not like it's a throwaway thing. It all counts. And I think of the efforts that we might make, and you might think it's just not that big a deal. Oh, no, it is. It all matters because you're doing that. Someone is doing this. Someone else is doing this. It's all, and all of these things come up together to make a difference in the lives of people, not only in our church, but in our community as well. So as the gathered people of God, we offer these kinds of teachings and words of what it means to be connected, to be members, to be the people who are carrying on the mission of Christ in our lives. And one of the ways that can be expressed is through membership in the church. So that people become members we do that in United Methodist Church. Not every tradition has membership in the church, but we do. And that's a way for someone to say, I not only want to show up and be in church, I'm ready to get involved. I'm ready to do something. I'm taking this seriously. I'm ready to take a step. And so today we actually have someone who will respond to the word in that way. And so I'm going to invite James Schuler to come up and join me. Some of you might have met James already. James comes from a long line of United Methodists. So he's coming about transfer to our church. So James, I know that you know the drill because after our conversation, you know the drill. But I'll ask you to reaffirm your vows that you would be loyal and supportive of this church with your prayers, your presence, your gifts, your service, and your witness. Thank you, James. So James is going to be around at the reception also, and so I hope that you'll take a minute and greet him. Now, we have a way that we verbally will support him, and so since I don't have that paper in front of me, they're going to put that up on the screen. Members of the household of God, I commend James to your loving care, so do all in your power to increase his faith, confirm his hope, and perfect him in love. We give thanks for all that God has already given you, and we welcome you in Christian love as members together with you in the body of Christ and in this congregation of the United Methodist Church. We renew our covenant faithfully to participate in the ministries of the church by our prayers, our presence, our gifts, and our service, that in everything God may be glorified through Jesus Christ. So James, welcome. Look forward to getting to know you better. And he's already a greeter, by the way. He's already a greeter. Great example of what I'm talking about. He's a great greeter. Whatever it is, that we offer that to God. We offer that to the people around us so that we can make a difference. To God be the glory.